Elections administration. This was an elections reform bill, but there was a section of the bill that requires single-member county commission districts to be on the ballot following redistricting. There were a number of exemptions that were included in there. Pinellas County does not fall into any of those exemption categories. So as a result, all single-member county commission districts today will be on the ballot in November of 2022.
How many counties are applied by this bill when you apply those exceptions?
I've heard different numbers. It is at most 2 or 3, at possibly 1.
Commissioner Long has a question.
Yes, I do. And I do believe my question is more of a legal question, Brian, so if you just, Jewel, if you could pay attention, please. I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess it up. As it relates to this bill, do we have a cause of action to challenge this bill that clearly prioritizes Pinellas County and singles out only 2 county commissioners who have already run for re-election and been elected by our citizens? And do they have to continue to run for re-election? Can we challenge this? That's my question. Thank you.
First, let me answer a question that you asked Brian. We have taken a look at the bill and taken a look at the applicability of it throughout the state, and do believe it applies to only Pinellas County. Some of the other counties that I have heard suggested that it applies to, we have specifically pulled the charters of those counties. For instance, Duval County has been suggested. Their charter provides for term limits, and therefore they are specifically exempted from the terms of this. That's the one specific county that's been suggested to me, but I can tell you we've taken a look throughout, and this bill only applies to Pinellas County. That being the case, I do believe we would have a cause of action for it being filed illegally as a general bill as opposed to a local bill. Because of course there are requirements, and I can't really speak to the specifics. I know Brian or Don could, but there's special requirements, and many of you know from your days in the legislature, local bills have local notice requirements, local public hearing requirements, and things of that nature from a due process standpoint for the citizens of Pinellas that obviously were not complied with here. So I do think that that would be a primary cause of action if the county were to decide that they wanted to take up a challenge.
Further questions? Commissioner Gerard.
I guess I want to ask, are you prepared to do that? Because it would be your office.
If the direction of this board was to file suit, my office would be prepared to do that. We would obviously handle that in-house. We have a staff of local government experts, and we would be perfectly prepared to handle a case like this. This board would simply need to take action to direct the county attorney's office to file such a suit. One caveat I would add is that this bill has not become law. As early as this morning, I know that my staff checked and it has not been forwarded to the governor for his action. So until the bill becomes law, I do not believe we would have a legitimate cause of action. But I would say this, given time frames and the approaching of qualifying in June and just the expediency with which we would need to move forward with a case like this, we would be asking any court to hear it. We would have to file this in Leon County, but we would be asking for the case to be handled on an expedited basis through some of the emergency measures that exist for any plaintiff to move a case forward quickly. So with that being the case, I would suggest that if the commission was desirous of filing suit, that you take action sooner rather than later to authorize such a lawsuit. You obviously could not do so today, but you could at any regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. And I say that because when you go into court seeking something to be handled on an emergency basis, you really need to file suit as soon as possible. So with that said, I would just, again, kind of say that if you were to take action, I would recommend that you do so sooner rather than later. We really don't have any idea when that bill will be forwarded to the governor, but we would like to be prepared if it is the will of the board to move forward to file a lawsuit as soon as possible after that happens.
Brian, what's the time frame that the legislature is required to send legislation to the governor?
Do they have, after session has sine died, I don't know if there's a time frame when it has to be presented. Once he's presented with it, I believe he has 15 days to act.
But isn't, so there, I mean, there's no time frame that they have to 30 days, 60 days, 90 days after sine die that they must forward legislation. I mean, I can't see that actually happening, but I think there is, and we'll find a lawyer who can answer this question, that beginning of the next regular session, that would kind of wipe away previous acts. But I have to believe there's some sort of time frame. Regardless, it will be forwarded to the governor at some point relatively soon, I would imagine. Commissioner Gerard.
Well, along that line, he could actually wait till after qualifying to forward this bill to the governor? I mean, they could.
I assume that that's a possibility. I agree with Brian. I don't believe that there's any sort of limitation or any requirement or timeframe within which the bills have to be forwarded. So I assume that would be a possibility. If that were the case, I'm not really sure how the provisions related to Pinellas County would play out. But certainly that, that might be something that could be the topic of a lawsuit as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I would just point out that it is the overarching bill is an elections reform bill, and there is an election this year. So I think there's going to be significant pressure from the supervisor of elections and the Department of State that they need time to implement these changes prior to this year's election, and I would assume that would be primary and qualifying as well.
Right, and that's where I think, I don't know the other provisions, how applicable they are to the 2022 cycle, but the ones that are would be the ones that you would want to look at to see the priority for the governor to sign. Certainly the improper or, as you termed, illegal filing of a local bill would be a big part of the cause of action, I would think. But I still think, and I know we've discussed this a little bit, that in the Florida Constitution, the county commissioners are elected to a 4-year term, and the voters of Pinellas County elected 2 of these commissioners to a 4-year term. And if the legislature can come in and change the term of an office of a constitutional body such as a county commission, I think that's pretty amazing. That what would stop them from doing it to any elected office in the state? I mean, I just think that's an amazing a stretch of power attempt here. So I would certainly be in favor of exploring our options with that timeline. Commissioner Gerard.
Just one more question. So the budget has not gone to the governor yet?
Correct.
Do we have any idea when it will? Is there a time limit on that? How long?
Well,
They
the
hold on
fiscal
to that?
year takes effect on July
July
1.
1st.
So we've seen that when when the current governor has received the budget, he typically acts quick on it. So while he has not been presented the budget yet, we know that his staff is reviewing it.
Further questions?
Well, never mind. I'll keep that comment to myself.
Understood. All right, Brian, thank you. Next slide.
Next, and I'll try to go through these last 3 quickly, wanted to touch on redistricting because there were a few effects that it'll have on districts here in Pinellas. State and House map, or state, Senate, and House maps, those kind of flew through the process. They were pretty easy. There is one change to Pinellas. We're going from the current 10 members in our legislative delegation to now we will lose 1 House district. That was the House District 64, which is mainly a Hillsborough district, but did encompass some of the North East Lake community east of East Lake Road. So that'll be shifted out. And then the most northern House district, that did have some areas north of Pinellas and Pasco. Those will be shifted down.
Is that the currently Representative Coster?
District 64, that'll move out of Pinellas, that is currently represented by Representative Coster.
Thank you.
And then on the congressional map, you're well aware the map that was approved by the legislature, sent to the governor, that was vetoed. That's why they're up there now in special session. We expect today the map that was submitted by the governor's office that has been gone through committees the last day and a half, and we expect that that'll pass the legislature later today. The big point here is that the current Senate or Congressional District 12, represented by Representative Bilirakis, that would move out of Pinellas into Pasco. District 13, currently held by Representative Chris, that would move and encompass pretty much all of Pinellas except for a portion that is east of I-275 and US 19, and that will bring in District 14, currently held by Representative Castor.
Questions?
It literally, the new map literally cuts Childs Park in half, which is a very strong, from Childs Park to Wildwood, and then going over to historic Kenwood, Old Northeast. So it literally cuts it in half. It resembles pretty much what the district looked like before when Congressman Kathy Castor first got into Congress, and we were kind of split between her representation, and at the time, coming over from Bill Young to the person that followed him.
Congressman Jolly.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting. Of course, there are a number of entities who've already stated that they are looking at filing a lawsuit against the map based on its current proposed district lines, but very interesting.
Yeah, there's $1 million in the bill for their litigation fund. Commissioner Eggers.
You said east of I-275 would do what?
That would become Congressional District 14,
Okay.
Which is mainly a Hillsborough district, currently held by Representative Castor, and that does pick up Feather Sound as well. So it's Feather Sound wraps around over there. Roosevelt 275 runs south, picks up US 19 further south in St. Petersburg.
So District 13 that goes up to about Bel Air now, would this go all the way up to the county line?
This would go all the way up to the county line.
So then Bill Arrakis would be
Pasco.
running for 13.
That would be up to him.
I mean, okay.
Safe answer.
Good point. Yeah, I don't know where, the whole where do you live thing, I guess is different.
Congressional districts, it doesn't matter where you live.
Different story, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the district would basically, east of 275 and Pinellas would become in the Hillsborough majority seat. And it's different than when it was with Congressman Young, where it was basically southeast Pinellas. Basically, black Democrats were put into the Tampa seat there. But after the redistricting litigation over the years, we got rid of the split across the bridge. But this would basically take us back to where it's the eastern bubble of South Pinellas, St. Petersburg, over into the Hillsborough seat. Or in case you were looking, it's basically where every Democratic congressional candidate lives now, goes from District 13 to District 14. But I know that they didn't look at people's addresses.
Last time, literally, the pink street, if you lived on the southern side, you were Congressman Bill Young. If you lived on the northern side, you were Jim Davis. I mean, it was literally the middle of the street.
Further
And
comments? All right, thank you, Brian.
just on to the budget highlights, wanted to make sure I informed you of affordable housing. This is a big topic. This morning we spent a significant amount of time on this. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund was funded this year at $362.7 million. Last fiscal year, it was at $209.2 million. So that's an increase. However, I would note that of that $362 million, $100 million of the sale funds, which are administered through tax credits at Florida Housing Finance Corporation, those have been earmarked for the Hometown Heroes housing program. And I can't speak to what that program is yet because those parameters have not yet been put in place. As far as it relates to Pinellas County and the dollars that we get through the SHIP program, last year we got $3.3 million. This year we're expected to get $4.8 million. So we will see an increase here to the funds that Housing Community Development administers through the SHIP program. Resiliency Florida Trust Fund, this was included on here just to show you there was a significant investment in resilience. You'll see there are a number of programs that were funded. These are for resiliency planning grants, the data collection, modeling, projections, regional resilient coalitions, and also projects that are local projects and state projects that are identified in the statewide plan. Beach Nourishment, they funded that at $50 million. This has typically been what we've seen the last few years, although last year it was slightly more at $75 million. They used some federal funds to increase that last year. Job Growth Grant Fund was also fully funded at $50 million, and Visit Florida was fully funded at $50 million, and which dovetails on the fact that that was reauthorized for a few additional years. So they're a great partner, and I know you're happy to hear that. With that, happy to take any questions. I will note that I wanted to touch on the issues that touch to your priorities, issues that are high level, affect policy issues that may come before you. But there are a number of additional bills that will have impacts to some degree on departments. We'll be working with the individual departments over the coming months to prepare for those changes. I did also include in the Granicus item as an attachment the FAC session report. That's really good. Specifically, they also include the bills that did not pass. With that, happy to answer any questions you've got.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, on the federal dollars that are flowed down to the state on the ARPA and anything else that, any of those federal funds that are coming down that the state is getting, are they in the budget? Are they included in that revenue side? And and how much of that is being expended in this year's budget? Do we have a sense of that?
Yeah, and they have a separate list. They kept that kind of separate from during the budget process. That came out at the end, what those funds would be used to. It's itemized. There's maybe 20 programs that's going to be used on. We're happy to send that to you.
Yeah, and what was that dollar amount? Do you remember?
It was a lot. Was it 3 or 6 billion, I want to say?
3 or 6. And I'm assuming those, yes? I'm assuming those numbers are in that 110 that you said earlier?
The 112 billion?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So that just it's kind of a flow through.
Yes.
Okay. And are we going to have at some point an understanding of what those dollars are and what they can be used for, or what access we're going to have to them through, grant applications or?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing an update on the ARPA funds, but what programs at the state level, that's a great question. That's something we'll try to add to that.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Great job.
Further questions? You have a question? Commissioner Long?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to hearken back to our previous conversation and ask if there is a reason that we need to give Jewel direction today.
If you all did intend to, and desire to move forward with the lawsuit, again, you could not take action today. You could take action on Tuesday, and again, as I mentioned, given the expediency with which we'd be asking a court to act, you may wish to grant authorization before the bill becomes law, and in that case, the county attorney's office would be in a position to file suit immediately, because I do think that is what would be necessary to convince a court to act with all due haste if we were, to do the same. So for instance, if you all had a meeting Tuesday, did nothing, and the bill was signed the next day, and we waited 2 weeks to grant that authorization, I believe we would potentially have a difficult time convincing a court that it was a true emergency.
So think about that issue over the weekend, and we can revisit this on Tuesday for action. And Brian, thank you and Southern for all the good work during session, keeping us updated. We really appreciate it. And we make our, or I should say, I make my quips and my little remarks on things that we don't like to happen in Tallahassee, but a lot of good stuff happened in Tallahassee this year, and there was certainly a lot of good funding that our local legislative delegation brought home for really important projects here, and we are grateful for that partnership. Again, thank you for all your good work this session. All right, we have completed 2 out of the 6 items on our agenda, and we are going to take a lunch break before the pizza gets completely ice cold. It's 12:15. How about 12:45? That work? All right, we're in recess.